everyone. It's good. Oh, yeah, thanks for that. There's no graceful way to start recording. I appreciate you jumping in. So welcome back, everyone. Really good to see you here for week 2 of our intro class. Yeah, I hope everyone had a chance to experiment with the home practice that Shelly suggested of finding a spot in your home that feels comfortable uh, and sitting there or being there, going there. So maybe we'll have some time later to hear from people how that was. But for now, we're here and we can settle in. I'll lead about a 20-minute guided meditation to start. But sort of taking our inspiration from Shelly's instruction, maybe we don't need to rush to meditation, but maybe we feel that this space here is a comfortable, quiet space. So we can just first sense how we are here. Maybe also sensing everything that it took to get ourselves here. Maybe some sense of why we're here. It's not a small thing to take the time to come here or to set aside the time. So we simply open to what we find when we settle into being here, putting aside as best we can our usual concerns and worries, trusting that we can pick them back up later. But for now, we have this time where we can let things settle as if we were a snow globe that's been stirred up, but that has the natural inclination to settle as long as we're not stirring it up again. One meditation teacher said that to sit and know that we're sitting, if we do that, then the whole of our development of the path of awareness will unfold. To sit and know that we're sitting. How do we know that we're sitting, not just as a concept, but as a moment to moment felt experience? Sitting here now. Maybe pressure, the sensations of our butt on the cushion or on the chair. However our body is positioned, we can know that directly. You could ask, what else is here to be known in this experience of sitting? Is there a way to land more fully right here? Maybe this looks like relaxing the body, the habitual ways that we might hold tension. As if we're continually settling in a fuller, deeper, wider way to this sitting position, landing more and more right in the middle of being here now, and simply sensing what we sense. As we sit with the body in this simple way, we might notice the rhythm of breathing that's happening on its own. We might notice how that breathing affects us. Maybe for the first time in our lives, we could be interested in how breathing affects the body, how it affects the mind, to receive with full awareness this breathing, movement, energy, sensations, however we know that we're breathing. Making room for the breathing to be known, to be felt, not holding on to it or trying to control it. Simply sensing how we experience the breathing to whatever degree we are sensitive to it as we sit here in a relaxed way. Being willing to be present for our breathing in a wholehearted way, so that we are with the breathing itself, not just our idea of breathing. Knowing an in-breath, knowing an out-breath, Noticing the different qualities of the breathing. Maybe some breaths are longer, some are shorter, deeper or shallower. We don't need to judge or have a preference. Being right with the breathing. As a way of landing more deeply and fully here and now. Remembering it's okay to relax the body, relax the mind. Simply noticing the effect of breathing with full awareness, how it affects the body, how it affects the mind, for another minute or so. Free to stand or stretch if you'd like. Seems okay to me. So I'll share some thoughts now on this topic of seclusion, which is a little bit of what we were doing in that meditation, seclusion, particularly secluding the mind, right? In a way, we're also secluded to some degree here in this nice quiet space, but also with our mind, we can this is kind of a radical idea in a way that, to sit for 20 minutes and not think about all the things we could be thinking about, planning all the things we could be planning. Maybe you did that, but it happens. It's the habit of the mind. But to come back to something simple like breathing is kind of a radical thing to do. But what it teaches us is that it's okay. It's possible. Even with our to-do lists, even with the world as it is, it's possible and maybe even beneficial, healing even, supportive, to, for a period of time, turn our attention away from what's agitating, from what's provocative, and to be with something simple, to learn the art of simplicity. And, I can say that. It took me a couple minutes to say that. So it's a simple idea, and yet kind of a refrain that we often say in mindfulness is it's simple but not easy, right? Does that ring true for anyone? Because our minds are really habituated to complexity, um, we haven't trained the mind in this art of seclusion. And it's counterintuitive in a way, it's countercultural. But the invitation is really to see for ourselves, is this supportive? Does this allow something to settle which feels good in the moment and also kind of gives us a perspective outside of the kind of usual busyness of the mind, and then maybe coming out of that, there's a little bit more composure in the mind, you know. Even right now, you might feel, even, just in that little amount of time, yeah, my mind's a little bit more composed. If someone were to come and tell me some bad news, I might be a little bit more able to deal with it in a skillful way. So that's kind of the theory, is that this is a big part of what we're training in and learning, is this art of seclusion. And it's not a small thing, and it's not easy. It takes time. Yeah, just speaking for myself, in some ways, even though I've been practicing for 18 years almost, I still feel like a beginner often, because the mind is so deeply habituated to always prefer, to always almost trust complexity and to distrust simplicity. But I've learned through my own experience how supportive that ability to put aside what's complex, what's agitating for a time, to give the mind a break, to give the mind a little vacation. We do all sorts of things to sort of give our minds vacations, but we may not be fully there for that experience, or it may just be a distraction. So really the art of meditation is the full awareness with the intentional secluding, soothing of the mind, so that we're really getting familiar that this mind has the capacity to be fully present but also at ease, also in a balanced state. And that's a beautiful state in and of itself. And it's the kind of mind that is nimble, can see more clearly, so that when we're in our daily lives, we have more of a chance to be there fully for our experience, not get pushed around, be able to respond from a more grounded place. So that's sort of a summary of why this, what might from the outside seem strange, you know, for people who aren't interested in meditation, might seem like, what, what good is that? But we can see for ourselves that it's a mental training. It's not just tuning out. It would be easier in some ways if we could just turn the off switch, but it's this very gradual, I think of it very respectful. You can't force anything. Well, I like that image of the snow globe because there is a naturalness to the settling, but there's still an effort. In a way, the effort is we're so habituated to shake that snow globe that it takes some effort, some gentle effort, but some real effort to not shake the snow globe. And maybe we even need to give our hand in this metaphor something else to do. So, and that's sort of what techniques like mindfulness of breathing, or like we were offering last week, mindfulness of the whole body sitting, or mindfulness of hearing, these different primary objects are something to give that thinking mind a very simple task, something to attend to, so that it's not doing what it usually does. And it really opens up a different, you could say, dimension almost to our experience. It can be shocking when we first start to cultivate awareness and we have a few moments, maybe of a few moments in a row of just being with our bodies or being with breathing. And we realize how different that experience is to our usual mode. And it may not be until we have that contrast that we realize how much of our time we're really just spending in the thought world. And because moments of awareness with breathing or just with the body sitting, there's awareness, we're present, and we're present with some aspect of embodiment, and thoughts might arise, we might be aware of them, but it's different. You could call it sense reality, present moment reality, knowing things as they arise in the present moment, as opposed to thinking about things. One way we could talk about this is just the difference between being aware and not being aware. This is something that we can tune into as we begin to cultivate awareness. Just to notice in a meditation, or maybe if you're driving home, you could just take it on as an experiment, not turn on the radio, and just have the intention to notice when you're aware and when you're not aware. And if you do that, if you bring some attention to that, plant that seed of interest, you'll notice moments where you wake up from having been lost in some thought. Oh, now I'm aware. And I'm aware of what I had been thinking about. But in those moments that I was lost in that thought, I wasn't aware that I was thinking that. It's kind of amazing, actually, when we realize how much of our days are spent in that state of unawareness. And this is really what can prompt curiosity and interest. Oh, and just to see the difference, how being aware, what are the benefits of being aware? And what are the downsides to being unaware? For me, I experience awareness as sort of a coming home, regardless of what I might be aware of, but there's that sense that, oh yeah, I'm here with it. There's a sense of reality. There's a sense of being, attending to what is worthy of attending to, because it's here, it's now, it's real. And the body is a big part of that. So like we talked about last week, and I'll share a few more thoughts now on mindfulness of the body as a really important support for beginning to develop this understanding of the difference between unawareness and awareness. Because we could think about awareness all day, but to sense the body in its own terms is a really useful way to begin to get to know awareness, because the body doesn't think. The body feels, the body senses. And so when we're aware of the body, using the body's own natural attentional capacities to sense, like, for example, if we put our hands together right now, feel free to do this. Whatever you feel when you put your attention with your hands touching, that's a sensation. That's not a thought. We know that sensation in the mind, but it's different than a thought. And in a way, it's easier to be aware of a sensation than a thought, because our thoughts are so seductive. You think one thought leads to another thought, and pretty soon we're down some rabbit hole of a story. But the body is slower than that. It still feels, things change. There's all sorts of sensations that we can experience, and the body is connected to the mind and connected to emotions. But it's here and now, in the present moment. Like I mentioned in the meditation, this quote from Munindra, a teacher uh, back in the last century, who taught some of the teachers that are teachers of our teachers. He said, "Sit and know you're sitting, and the whole of the path will unfold." So it's not even that the body, itself is somehow transformative, but it's the benefit of awareness of the body. So to sit and know that we're sitting, how often when we're sitting do we know that we're sitting? So this is something we can practice all day long. When we're standing, to know that we're standing. And this, I think, even just moments of mindfulness of the body and sort of that sense of being here, sort of the mind and the body being in the same place, and how rare that experience might be, and how grounding, how connecting that can feel, I think gives us some beginning direction of where this awareness practice leads. There are a lot of teachings in Buddhism, and we can read a lot of books about Buddhism, but the real transformation is in learning to be here now with what is. And so the body is really an important support in that. And all the maybe beautiful qualities that we aspire to, love, peace, presence, all of those have an embodied component. So it's not just the idea of love or peace, but what does peace feel like in the body? So whenever we have some sense, even just for a moment in our meditation, oh, this feels good in the body. This feels like peace in the body. This feels like my heart is softening, opening, relaxing. We want to notice that and let that in, let that register, because again, this isn't just something to figure out conceptually. It's a retraining of our whole system, which a lot of it, you know, happens here in the body. What do we trust? Do we trust agitation, or are we beginning to trust that this body and mind do have the capacity to settle and to settle with awareness? So mindfulness of breathing, I gave a few directions in the guided meditation related to mindfulness of breathing. And there are different ways to think about it, to practice it. But one of my teachers, Ajahn Sucitto, has a nice book called Breathing Like a Buddha that I've really enjoyed recently. And I was sort of trying to share some of what I've gotten from his teachings in the guided meditation of breathing as a natural, involuntary rhythm that we tune into as we begin to settle here and now, settle into the body. So something that's happening on its own, that's rhythmic, that we don't have to control or manage, and that has an effect on the body. To breathe with full awareness has a soothing effect when we're not trying to control it or judge it. And not everyone will have that experience immediately. So it's important to not rush to what we think mindfulness of breathing is, but to start with being here now, tuning into being here in the body, and then seeing how do we sense the breathing? How do we know that we're breathing? And to see if the mind can be with that experience in a really simple way, just knowing that experience. It is happening. We are breathing. How do we know that we're breathing? Is it possible to receive those sensations, that energy, to let it have the effect that it does? So to, in a way, include the breathing in our awareness. And so it's one option as something to give the mind to attend to, because it's here, it's happening, um, it's relevant in a way. It affects us. So it's a place for our hearts and minds to gather. And that's the direction of that seclusion. And we just, in as much time as we have for our daily sit, uh, it's just that process of settling. So if you have 5 minutes, you know, you just sit and let the snowflakes settle a bit. If you have 20 minutes, maybe they settle, and something in your direct experience, maybe breathing, arises and you gather around that. But there's never a real benefit to trying to speed it up, trying to get to a certain experience. So I'll leave my thoughts there for now and turn it over to Shelly to lead us in another guided meditation.
Free to move a bit if you want to. You can stand up. If you'd like to bounce around a little. It's good to do that even if you don't think you need it. I'll join you. Even though I don't think I need it. It's a way of just reminding the nervous system that we're not trapped anywhere. A little bouncing. Just a little input on the heels, a little bouncing on the heels. That earth input is really good for the nervous system. Nobody will think you're weird, at least around here, if you just pop in and do a little bouncing on your heels randomly in the middle of the day, right, Gabe?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is a Qigong move. It's called rattle them bones. And you just let it all hang out, just shake, bounce, shake, however you want. And then just find some stillness. And feel the reverberation of the movement somewhere in the body. And see how natural it is to connect with the felt sense of the body. Just lingering there. Feeling something. And when you're ready, just lower yourself down onto your cushion or chair again. Just find a comfortable enough position for the body. And when you found it, just know you found it. You don't even have to force the eyes closed. But with the invitation to be restful. A felt sense of comfort. You might notice what happens naturally. Maybe the gaze softens and lowers. And perhaps on their own, the eyes just close. And the attention naturally rests somewhere on the body or breath. Seclusion is natural. You might even get a taste of how seclusion feels good. You don't need to go get anything, to go get the body or to go get the breath. Just that invitation to connect and to rest is enough. We receive what's already here. The breath is already here. Just resting and receiving the breath. Wherever it feels natural. Maybe it's that feeling of the whole body breathing. Or maybe the breath feels more central. The rise and the fall of the chest or the belly. And taking air in and letting air out. Remembering that seclusion is natural. It feels good. And so when we tip into controlling or trying to find it, you can just feel how that feels different. And simply the naturalness of resting and receiving what's already here. Finding a restfulness. And ease. Be a guide. And just explore mindfulness of breathing on your own, in your own way, for the next 6 minutes or so. Mindfulness of breathing is intimacy with breath and body. We all know intimacy. It isn't forced, but relaxed, vulnerable, and connected. Intimacy with the body breathing. Or another way we might say that is attuning to the body breathing. Every now and then you might notice that it feels good to be intimate. Now we have time for a little back and forth, a little engagement, conversation, question and response, however you like to describe it. Any questions about Gabe's instructions this evening, or his reflection about the practice, what we're doing here, or anything at all?
And we have
Say your name again for us.
Hi, my name is Elena. I use she, her pronouns. See, I've been considering this question for a little while here, and I hope I can articulate it. But I'm wondering if we're able to cultivate an awareness of the sensations of our body, will we be able to cultivate awareness of our thoughts and emotions, and why do we think what we think, and why do we feel what we feel? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, really great question. And let me ask you this. When you start meditating, for example, you notice something, right? And after you've been meditating for a few minutes, does that, what you're noticing, do you notice something more subtle sometimes?
I notice the sensations in my body, yes. And then I notice when I'm losing focus on my body.
Yeah.
When I'm starting to have thoughts about
Yeah.
whatever is going on in my life. And then I return back to,
Yeah.
okay, what does it feel like when I breathe in? What does it feel like? What do my fingertips feel like?
Yes, so that's you're demonstrating or illustrating the more subtle experience that you notice when the mind gets familiar with practicing being present. So we're cultivating a habit of awareness, and that habit of awareness, when it gets stronger, it will notice more and more subtle experiences. So, for example, we're not very mindful as a group of human beings. We're not usually that mindful during our day. And then we go, okay, I'm going to practice mindfulness. And so the first thing that we might notice is, okay, I'm sitting here, right? I'm aware of I'm aware of more than just sitting here. I'm aware that this body, there's lots of sensations. That's more subtle than just noticing that I'm sitting here, right? And then when the mind gains a little bit of traction, awareness gains a little bit of traction, then we notice like, oh, wait a second. Awareness isn't a static thing. It's here and then it's lost and then it's here again, right? That's a more subtle knowing. So as we practice awareness, you will notice more and more subtle experiences. Will it be the same every day? Absolutely not. So we have to get good at being okay with however it is. It's like this right now, right? Sometimes we'll know what we notice will be on the grosser level, and that's still good. And other times it will be on the more subtle level. Sometimes we'll notice thoughts. Sometimes we'll even be curious about what those thoughts are and how they came to be. Right? So we're in meditation, we're interested in how questions like, oh, look at that. These are anxious thoughts. How do those anxious thoughts come to be? There's a cause and effect relationship with our life and thought, for example, or body sensation. Oh, look at that. Anxious thoughts, strength of body sensation right here in the middle of my chest, for example. There's a relationship between thought and body sensation and emotion. So those things will start to become more clear, the connections that we have with different experiences and the movement between the subtle and the gross. And without making it into a project, meditation into a project to go get something, like I need to go get more subtle, or I need to go get more wisdom about something. We just really, like what Gabe was, the beautiful way Gabe led us into the meditation in the beginning, just how natural it is to settle and to feel we have a body. And then for that to lead us to more interest, an interest in the way it actually is with this body and with the breath. Yeah. And we'll start to learn, the mind will be interested in different questions, like what's skillful, what's not skillful. And then we'll have some agency, some choice in what we feed and what we choose not to feed. Like, oh yeah, that's ruminating. Perhaps that's not feeding those thoughts right now is not the right thing, but because we've noticed them, now there's a choice. Like, oh, how about right now just feel the earthiness of the body, the gross sensations of the body on the cushion or the chair. And then the mind goes right back to that ruminating. Oh, sweetie, I don't know about that right now. How about just this? It's not like we're somehow denying our life. We're just making a choice. This feels a bit more skillful, more useful. And when we learn how to taste that seclusion that feels good, then we learn to value it. And that will be an easier decision to make. Yeah, does that help a little?
Um, Thinking about meditating on thoughts, because I feel like right now we're really focusing on meditating on sensations, but kind of what you were just saying made me feel like eventually you maybe want to get to the point, or it just will happen, obviously, naturally, that you start to like meditate on what you're thinking about, and not in a ruminating way, but in a more kind of reflective way. In a meditation session, how far should you go into like thinking about thinking and like actually what you're thinking, right? And not like, is that something that like when you're saying like, okay, I'm ruminating, but maybe like let's focus on like the sensations right now, like is there a type of meditation where you're like, kind of figuring out where thoughts are coming from and why they're coming up and how they're coming up without slipping into the kind of like reverie and the rumination? Like, how do you feel the difference there? We don't know anything about thinking that.
Do you mind sharing your name with us?
Oh yeah, it's Sierra.
Sierra, thanks. We're just going to take turns. So thinking isn't the enemy. And that's important to say because sometimes we have that idea that meditation is about not thinking. Thinking is bad. But obviously thinking isn't bad. Thinking can, we've probably all experienced, lead us, into like places where we're just chasing our own tail, like ruminating, like you're saying. And maybe we've had the experience of thinking arising from maybe what we might experience as a deeper place or something like intuition, and there's this sense of clarity or something. So thinking is part of our life. We're not going to avoid it. However, thinking is very slippery because we love thinking. We think that thinking is the solution to all our problems. If only we had more time to think, we would be able to solve it all. And so when we hear about meditation, and even the word meditation, some people can use that word to mean thinking. So we can think, oh, this is the time when all my distractions I put aside and I just think really hard and solve my problems. And you could try that. That wouldn't be wrong. And you might actually that might actually be a beneficial thing to do. And I do that sometimes. People have journaling practices and things like that. You set aside some time and you think mindfully. You think with some purpose. You reflect on your life and what's important. But that is different than cultivating a growing understanding of what it's like to be aware versus not being aware. And the thing about thinking, even that kind of more reflective thinking, is it's still on the level of me trying to solve my problems. And so, yeah, again, it's not that it's bad, but there's something about learning about awareness and what awareness is. It's hard to talk about almost because awareness is almost the water that we swim in. And so we don't really, appreciate that there is a benefit to being aware. And part of that benefit is, yes, that we will be more sensitive to our mental activity, but generally speaking, we don't just try to be aware of thinking as a first move. So as we go on with the weeks, we'll talk more about thinking. So this is just sort of some first thoughts about it. But just one thing, to say in this realm is that we're already going to be learning about thinking, what we think about, and its effect on us, on our body, on our emotions, even if we're not intentionally trying to think. And actually, we'll learn a lot, kind of like Shelly was pointing to, we'll learn a lot about our mind by attending to the body in the simple way. We'll see, where does my mind tend to go? I'm not even trying to think, I'm just trying to be here in a peaceful way, but I can't stop thinking about that. So even though we're not taking that up intentionally and trying to analyze, was that because in third grade, this, but we're just seeing, oh, this is a tendency of the mind and it has this effect here and now. So in general, that's the approach we take to thinking in terms of awareness, is seeing it as something happening here and now that has an effect on how we are. And in these first weeks, generally, we're saying, okay, realize now I've been thinking, maybe take a minute or moment to feel, oh, this is the effect that it's had on my mind and body. Feel that. And then return to just being with the sensations, but you're still going to be with the body and mind that is now the body and mind that had been thinking. So when we get to talking about emotions as well, we'll be exploring more how it's a way to be with our experience, including the fullness of our experience, but in a non-conceptual way. So to be, if we're having angry thoughts, then generally the advice with awareness practice is to not keep thinking about what makes us angry, but to ask, what does being angry feel like here in the body? Because that gives us a way to be with our real experience, but outside of the world of the story that sort of tends to have its own self-fulfilling energy. And then being with the energy of the emotion, we might learn something that we would never learn just thinking about the story. Like we might learn, this hurts, this is heavy, this is agitating, I care about that. How could I be with this emotion in a way that, it feels soothing? So, and thoughts aren't the problem. One teacher says we don't practice to get rid of thoughts, but to be aware of thoughts every time they arise. So for now, when we know we're thinking, we just know, oh, I've been thinking. Maybe this is the effect it's had. And I'm going to put that aside for now. I can come back to it later, but I'm just going to be in a more simple way with my experience and see what benefits that might have. And we kind of have to take it on faith to start, because it's totally not, again, what we trust. But in my experience, there's so much I've learned that's of value here in my direct experience, even just being with my body and seeing how the body and mind interplay, but in this more direct moment-to-moment experiential way. So that would be my encouragement for now. Yeah, thanks.
Anybody in Zoom land want to jump in? Okay, somebody here in the room?
Oh, I have something, a question.
Okay, go ahead, Jamie.
My name's Jamie. I'm in Seattle. I use they, them pronouns. I started meditating through apps and like doing a lot of guided meditations. And I didn't know. Then I like stopped, and then I was just using like a timer on my phone and meditating in silence. And it felt harder. And then I kind of stopped doing it. And then I was talking to my therapist, and she was like, oh, I always do guided meditations. And so I found some on YouTube and I started using those. And it became a lot easier. But this is just my roundabout way of like, is there any sort of, I don't know, like, is it sort of like personal preference of like, oh, you like guided meditations, use guided meditations, or like start with guided meditations and then work your way up to meditating more in silence? I was just curious about your all's thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Raise your hand if you have meditated with apps before. Yeah. Yeah, it's really natural thing. So a lot of people do that. There's a lot of them out there, and it's not even new. Apps they're always evolving into something else, something more, I don't know what, just lots of things. They have children, like more of the same, more of something new, more better, more, whatever, the evolution of app-based or technology-based meditation. And in the beginning, when, even in the beginning of the pandemic, when so much meditation went online, it was, there's some doubt, like among teachers, especially, it's not going to work, but it's here. So we don't need to have that kind of an attitude, like it's good or better or worse than anything else. It's just something new, something different, and there's a lot of it. And if it works for you, that's great. Keep doing if it works for you. And we would have some suggestions probably about some good sources out there, so that at least if you want to stay consistent with the language and practice and style that you're learning here at Common Ground, it translates. You'll hear similar language like that. So ask us if you want us to share a little bit about that. And to go back to what Gabe was saying about thinking, sometimes it's totally fine to use guided meditations, and sitting in silence takes some getting used to. We don't really know what to do with ourselves when we're not goal driven, or when we don't have something to think about, right? Or something to chew on. And we often don't even know that that's what's happening. We don't know that we're just getting through things, like moving from task to task to task during the day, and getting something done, thinking about something else, getting that done, thinking about something else, getting that done. And just being still and being with ourselves, feeling our body, feeling the sensation. It's just not something we have much practice at doing. And so then we sit down to meditate with all the silence, without an app or a teacher guiding us. And we are like, well, this is weird. What are you supposed to do here? Right? Because the mind is used to having a goal, getting something done, accomplish something, moving on to the next thing, listening to something, chewing on it, figuring it out. Those are the normal habits of the mind. And we don't notice that all of that time the mind is thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. And then to get still and ask the mind to just be with the sensations of the body or the movement of the breath, the mind does not know how to do that, right? And so if we feel that the mind doesn't know how to do that, and we feel this is really uncomfortable, that's good to feel. We should feel that. Yeah. Because it helps us to wake up to something that's been the way it is for us, but we just haven't known it. So largely what we wake up to when we're meditating is the momentum of all of the habits of our minds and our society and our family systems and our workplaces, our cultures. We wake up to that there's habits playing themselves out through our body, through our speech, through our way of living, through our way of being. That includes thinking a lot, often getting stuff done, and not being aware of the body, not being in connection with ourselves in real subtle ways, and often not being in connection with each other, although we might find ways to dispute that. But we all probably know what it's like to sit with someone, or to have sat with someone, and in an intimate way really connect. It doesn't require solving a problem together, right? There's something about presence that feels potent in moments like that. And so what we're doing, we could say, is getting to the heart of that and learning how to live with that. And by in order to form habits that are about that, we have to feel the momentum of the habits of the habits that aren't about that, right? And how Gabe said, but we love thinking. We'll notice, like, if you were to sit down with an app and then without an app, And here, remember that I said it's good to do both. And then you sit down without an app. I guarantee if we were to take a poll, at least half of us would go like, I don't know if Shelly's right. I don't know if this is for me, you know? I don't think everybody's like that. That's the mind that really likes the habits that we have. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with knowing that. So we don't have to avoid that, but just be willing to feel it. Because there's this, when the Buddha had his awakening, after that, there's this scripture that it's like the Buddha's having some doubt about what am I going to do with this? You know, all this learning. Am I going to share it with people? Am I just going to sit under a tree for years and feel it? What am I going to do? And he wants to share it with people, but he says something like, but I don't know how it's going to go. Yeah, because of what I've learned is so profound. It's very subtle. And he said, there's one translation of this particular moment, and he said, but people like their clinging. They love it and enjoy it, right? So it's really hard to buy into what we're selling here. And we should just know that. I mean, it's hard for Gabe and I to buy into what we're selling here. We just know that's just how the training goes. It's supposed to be a training that of cultivating habits that we know on some level that we want. And yet that path includes being in contact with habits that we want to affect. Yeah. And in a moment of discerning if we want to cultivate this habit or we want to cultivate that habit, what we feel is the momentum to cultivate this habit, even though we want that habit, right? That's a part of it. So do both. Do the app. If you feel like the app is useful, don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to notice the mind that's thinking. Don't be afraid to use thought skillfully. And don't be afraid to know the difference between when the mind is thinking and when we're aware of thought. The difference between thinking and being aware of thought. And when you're using an app, if you notice that the mind is thinking instead of being aware of thought, you go, oh yeah, that's the way it is, isn't it? Right? So the app is not the problem. Silence is not the problem either. Neither of them are a problem. It's just like this. And the way of the world is the way of the world. Things will always change. The way meditation is delivered will change and shift with the changing conditions of our society. And but the Buddha has been teaching these relevant teachings for more than 2,600 years. And at least I have found that he's not wrong.
Time for one more. Hi, my name's George. I use he, him pronouns. I think I have a couple of questions here. Not sure how I'm gonna even arrive to them. More stuff about thinking. Who would have thought? Um, but I guess the first part of it is like we're talking a lot about like awareness of mind, awareness of body. But I've heard this idea before that I kind of subscribe to that maybe in a sense that's a false dichotomy. I guess I'm curious what you might think about that. And then also reference something that I think Shelly said last week that stuck with me, if I interpreted it correctly, that in a way, thinking is a little bit like the sixth sense. Um, I guess I'm curious how much you conceptualize it in that way, because that one really stuck with me where at times when I've meditated in the past, I'll sit and try to feel something, but then I feel like I'm never getting there because I'm thinking about feeling it. And then I'm thinking about not thinking. And then it's like I never quite get there, but something about that clicked with me, where it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm a person that thinks. I'm also a person that hears this fan, or a person that feels my feet. And I found now when I'm meditating, I'm kind of just bouncing around between what I think of as the six senses now, or perceiving a hike that I did. Instead of saying I went this many miles and saw
this was the degrees it was outside, and this is how much water I drank. I'm like, well, like there's that moment 40 minutes in where I sat quietly and like there was this like really, really small infinitesimal moments of like the leaves blowing around the wind or whatever. Then also replaying the thoughts I had, just kind of going through the six senses. I guess how often, my question, I guess, is about that mind body, thinking of it in terms
Yeah.
of six senses.
Yeah, thanks, George. George, right? Yeah, yeah, a lot there. I mean, I just think it's great that you're really interested in your mind and in awareness. And, we'll do our best to interpret the teachings of the Buddha, but all the Buddha's teachings are based on our direct experience. And insofar as the teachings are helpful, they're ways to look at our direct experience that are liberating from habits of mind that keep us bound, that keep us lost in our thoughts, as opposed to being with our direct experience as direct experience. And one of those maps, which you totally have correct, is the six senses. And in that model, mental activity is the sixth sense. So I think the way that you're thinking about it is really in line with how I understand it. And the usefulness of it can be that we're sort of, in a way, maybe demoting thinking from reality to one of six things that are always happening, things that we can be aware of. So it's just a thought. Good, pleasant thought, painful thought. It's just a thought happening here. So that's awareness of a thought. That's me trying to articulate that. So yeah, it gets confusing when you try to pin it down. But when we're aware, and this is why mindfulness of the body is really recommended, because like again with the hand thing, if you put your hands together, that's a sensation. When the fact that I can know that my hands are touching are because there are nerves in my hands. And so that is what we call body. That's a sensation. Sound, I can hear because my ears are working. And the sound of the blower, that's a sound. It's not a thought. I know the sound because my ears work and because my brain works. So the mind and the body are definitely connected. It's all, happening here and now. But there is a way to distinguish. One of the ways to distinguish them is the six senses. So, but yeah, the reason that we emphasize mindfulness of the body is because it's a way to start to get to know what awareness is, because we're less likely to get lost in thinking when we're attending in a simple way to breathing or to the body sitting. We can sustain moments of awareness, and we'll get to know what awareness feels like, what being present feels like. And then in those moments, we'll notice when the mind starts to think, and we'll have awareness of thinking. And we'll see that will be a very different perspective on thinking. You could call it a phenomenological perspective on thinking, seeing thinking arising, seeing the impact thinking has on our body and our mind is very different than being lost in thinking. And that's the distinction we want to start to see, like Shelly was saying, being lost in thinking versus being aware of thinking. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. We'll get into more of it as the weeks go on, but we do have to leave it here.
That is, thank you.
Yeah. So just 1 minute left. I'll give some invitations for our home practice this week. Every day, if you can, to continue on Shelly's instruction, to find your spot in your home that feels comfortable. Sit there for, if you have 5 minutes, if you have 20 minutes, even if you have 1 minute, but just to put your body there and to maybe recollect why you value awareness, what you're interested in, any seed that feels interesting from these last 2 weeks, what you care about, why you're interested in this, and then to just begin that process of not shaking that snow globe, and settling and feeling your body, but not rushing anything, not trying to get anywhere. Settling, being there, noticing what you notice. If you have a longer time, maybe then the mind takes up breathing or takes up one of these primary objects that feels like your mind enjoys being with that in a simple way, and just give yourself to that. So that time of seclusion, of putting everything else aside, and then see what impact that might have when you get up on the rest of your day. And to do all of that without rushing and with that value that you're doing this because you care. So there's kind of a intentionality or even sacredness just with sitting and being with your experience. So that's my invitation for the week, and hope to see you again next week. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
We have a few minutes to help put those chairs on the side of the room back against the wall. It would be great.